What's going on, guys? K-Dub here with another episode of Crypto Zombie. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a great day today. Now, you might be noticing a little bit of uptick in the Bitcoin price today. Now, yesterday's video, which didn't get a lot of views, I was explaining to you the situation with Bitcoin and why all of this doom and gloom needs to be ignored. A lot of people think that this ETF, when approved, it's not a matter of if, it's when, that it's going to be absolutely catastrophic for the price. It's just going to be complete manipulation, total suppression, right? And the whole entire ethos of the protocol itself is going to be lost. Well, I'm going to tell you guys today that there is this video that you absolutely have to watch that came out from an influencer. His name is British Hodl. Now, first time I ever heard this guy before. So in the next 13 minutes, and I highly suggest you guys stick to the end, he breaks down exactly what is going on in the background with BlackRock, the true nature of what BlackRock is doing, because all these people think that they're smarter than the largest asset manager on planet Earth. Well, it's time for a newsflash, guys. I'm not smarter than them. You're not smarter than them, but this is huge. And if you're thinking about selling your Bitcoin right now, or you're panicking, or you think we're going to go sub 20K or 10K and you don't really understand the implications, I highly, highly suggest that you guys stick to the end, because I think it's going to be absolutely eye-opening.
What is the end goal for BlackRock when it comes to Bitcoin? Why they would suddenly start putting all this effort into getting a Bitcoin ETF approved? Larry Fink's talking about Bitcoin on CNBC. I wanted to cover the direction that I think BlackRock will take in this market and give you my prediction on how I think BlackRock and the institutions are going to dominate this industry. So for people who are sitting here thinking about whether you should get into Bitcoin, BlackRock is out here accumulating all the Bitcoin and planning to control the whole industry. You are not the same as BlackRock. BlackRock is very strategic, and they're very, very professional at acquiring assets. You know, when the ESG thing happened, there was one firm that owned a bunch of forest land that could sell carbon credits. BlackRock. Surprise, surprise. And you know, the other thing is the ESG overall, while it might be portrayed as a really good thing for the environment and everything else, it has not generated really too positive returns. It's below real inflation levels of returns. And so their investors are looking at them going, what the hell, my return has been so low. So what's the solution? Number one solution, which is what I think is happening right now, is figure out how to take the best performing asset known to mankind and make that quote unquote ESG friendly. And you can now put that asset into the bucket of ESG. Over the next decade, your ESG bucket now looks like it's giving you 20%, whereas before it's giving you 5% a year return. So now the idea of ESG pays off, Bitcoin pays off, everyone's happy, BlackRock looks good, etc., etc., etc. So that's what I think is going to happen in a very strategic way. So firstly, I think BlackRock already has acquired or is acquiring Bitcoin as we speak. They fundamentally understand that there is finality of supply here. They understand how important that is. If they didn't, they would not have bought forest lands to sell carbon credits. There's no value in the trees. There's no value in property if you can build an unlimited amount of property in an unrestricted way. The only very value of life is the fact that it's scarce. So BlackRock truly understands the scarcity argument. I know there's a bunch of people that out there, the $1,000 net worthers and the doom and gloom boomer gang, that believe BlackRock doesn't understand. You think that you on Twitter, reading news once it's posted, retweeting other anonymous people's tweets, you think you know more about the hardest asset known to mankind than BlackRock. You are extremely arrogant. I don't care what Larry Fink's been saying on television. If I own a firm that big, I'm assigning 100 people and their entire life process, life purpose is to figure out Bitcoin. What is there to understand about Bitcoin? What are we missing? What are we not understanding? And I've done this years ago before I really take some action here. And this was evidenced. The internal BlackRock report that was leaked a year or so ago. They understand what Bitcoin is, and you sitting there going, BlackRock doesn't understand what Bitcoin is, you are a fool. You've got to look yourself deep in the eyes in the mirror and question whether you are talking sense or not. BlackRock, I guarantee you, has more people than you know spending their entire day trying to figure out Bitcoin. And now they've figured it out and they want to take a gamble at it. So the ETF is coming out. This allows BlackRock and the institution to suck up all the Bitcoin in the world as much as possible to push it into the ETF. And there is major advantages of that, because if you can control the price appreciation of an asset, that's more than enough for most people. Because whether you want to admit it or not, most of the people that talk about America's so bad, the UK's so bad, Australia's so bad, Canada's so bad, are not doing anything about it. They're not going out there, they're not leaving the country because they've got a house, they've got family, they've got parents, they've got kids, they've got a wife, they've got a husband. They've got commitments in the country, so the most they can do is tweet about it and talk about it. They're not actually physically getting up and leaving. So in that scenario, the idea of sovereignty is less valuable. Most people just want price exposure. Most people relate price exposure to sovereignty. Well, I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong. I'm just telling you how it is, which is why an ETF wrapper is so important for Bitcoin, because it allows people to get that price exposure and it allows them to increase their wealth and then gives them more sovereignty. It might not be true sovereignty, but it gives them a version of sovereignty, because if someone is worth $10 million instead of $100,000, they feel more sovereign. So they're going to suck in all this Bitcoin into this ETF. And I believe the purpose of doing that really is to control as much Bitcoin as possible. So now you use the ETFs to control it, and now they'll add other little services. One of the biggest, most profitable things that's going to come to Bitcoin is lending on Bitcoin, because the amount of money that's generated, the amount of credit expansions that's generated in the world because of lending on existing assets is huge. And I guarantee you it's going to be much more safer for an institution like BlackRock to lend against a Bitcoin ETF than Bitcoin. And Chamath actually did this. Chamath contributed his Bitcoin to GBTC. And he owns the shares of GBTC and he just holds on to them. That's what he did, because this makes sense for someone who is the new buyer of Bitcoin, because the new buyer of Bitcoin is much more sophisticated, much more sharper, and has access to resources and contacts that can allow them to generate liquidity on an asset that the market accepts at a much lower cost basis. For example, if the cost on borrowing against Bitcoin through Unchained Capital is 12% a year, it might only be 8% a year through an ETF wrapper. And that makes a big difference. To someone who's playing with $400 million, you've got to start thinking in an expanded way. The game is changing. These people are different. They're going to be buying Bitcoin, waiting for it to go up, liquidating it through these services. And these are extremely, extremely important, because people need access to liquidity. And the banking system's going to love it, because if they borrow against Bitcoin and Bitcoin has this parabolic rise and everyone starts borrowing against it, what happens to the deposit? And this is what Peter Dunworth has been talking about. You want to create liquidity on top of Bitcoin, because that liquidity can be used to continuously circulate within the banking system. So the ETF to me is the best way to do that for the banking system, for BlackRock. So what do? They apply for an ETF once they figure out how to get it approved. And considering they've only ever had one denial of an ETF application in their entire history, so really they've got a 100% success rate. So they're going to get this ETF and they start sucking in all this Bitcoin. There will be people that convert their Bitcoin and put it into this product. Whether you want to judge them or not, I don't give a shit. Whether you are $1,000 net worther and you're going, oh no, but it's about your freedom. Someone who's worth $400 million understands the game much better than you do. And 400 million, there's going to be people with $1 billion of Bitcoin. They completely understand the game and all the financing options that are available much better than you do. This might sound rude and it might come across as offensive to some people watching this, but this is the truth. You have to be aware of this, because if you don't become aware of what these latest financial tools are going to be for you to actually take the Bitcoin that you have, generate liquidity on it so you can do other things without having to sell it, you are going to sell your Bitcoin to these people. They will happily give you $1 million per Bitcoin once they understand it, once it's out there. They will happily give you $1 million. Why? Because they truly understand the finality of the scarcity of the asset. They understand how important it is to acquire as much of an asset as possible to control the market. Why do you think BlackRock is buying up single-family homes? I read a statistic. Only 41% of single-family homes in the USA are owned by the people who actually live there. Think about that. This is already happening in the property market. It's about to happen in Bitcoin, and it's better in Bitcoin because I don't need to send a team nowhere. Once I own the asset, it's on the blockchain, that is done. I infinitely reduce my costs of managing that particular asset. Instead of having a team of 2,000 people over the country making sure valuations are staying on point, etc., I've now got a team of 200 analyzing the market. So their first step is applying for that ETF. The next step is what you saw with KPMG. KPMG put out a report and they said Bitcoin Bitcoin is actually ESG friendly. You don't think, which is what I've been saying on Twitter, 6 to 9 months, a major publication is going to put out a piece on why Bitcoin is ESG friendly? If you don't think that's what's going to happen, you're a moron. Because if I control the media and I influence the media, what I want to do is I want to acquire as much of this asset as possible, convince my investors that they need to acquire as much of this asset as possible. So now I'm going to tell the biggest media organization in the world to do an article on why Bitcoin is ESG friendly, and I'll give them all the data to prove why it is. So now they turn around and say, okay, cool, Bitcoin is now ESG friendly. And now every single fund out there that thought about ESG because BlackRock pressured them into it says, we can tell people that we're being ESG friendly and make 80% CAGR a year. Fuck yes. Get into as much of that asset as possible. It's never going to be 100%, but it's going to be an allocation. And all this time we're talking about an asset that's completely finite. So what's the next step? Own the miners. BlackRock doesn't just come out and say, we'll take a little part of it. They want the whole thing. So they're now going to start increasing their stakes in the miners. And they're now going to start trying to control the miners and trying to get majority interest in all of these miners. So this is the game plan here. Once they control the miners, once they control the ESG narrative, Bitcoin will now become friendly for finance. So the next step might take 6 to 8 years onwards will be to figure out how to integrate Bitcoin in finance, because now we can use Bitcoin and actually help the environment when we do transactions, when we start doing foreign currency transactions. Whoa, cool, buy Strike. Great, Strike's now an ESG friendly company because now we're promoting the idea of we're saving the environment by using Bitcoin to do international transactions. Great. So now they start controlling financial services when it comes to Bitcoin. Oh, people want to borrow against their Bitcoin? Cool, we already got that happening. All you got to do is put your Bitcoin into the ETF and you can borrow against it. You take that borrowing and you put it into your bank account, and now the bank has generated liquidity to now lend against. So that starts working. And as the price of that asset goes up, you borrow more against it and you put more deposit into the bank. Now the bank can lend against that. So this whole thing is designed for BlackRock to own the future of the expansion of the US dollar empire. Now there's going to be some of you that go, oh my God, this is so bad. You can't control it because Bitcoin is money for everyone. You cannot control what they're going to do. The byproduct of this is that you'll have a multiple millions of dollars of price action, price discovery because of the scarcity of the asset. But Bitcoin is going to help the expansion of the US dollar. This is how it's going to work because this is how it always works when assets go up in value. Assets go up in value, people borrow against those assets, that borrowing gets dumped into the banking system expands. So that's why you have this rotating circle jerk until the whole thing falls apart. But in the medium term, I mean 25 to 30 years. Not 5 years, 25 to 30 years. This is going to cause that expansion. It's a different way to create expansion in the world. So the ETF is extremely important. That's why they got into it, because they understand that normal, average, wealthy person wants to own something through an ETF. You don't have any accounting headaches. You don't have any headaches as far as chain analysis goes. You don't have any headaches as far as accounting goes. You don't have any of those headaches. Just buy the ETF, done. Everyone knows how to deal with an ETF. So this is what I think is the plan. They want to control the whole industry, and everything hems on asset control, controlling the main players in the industry, and ultimately financial services. Because the more financial services get adopted onto Bitcoin, the price discovery of Bitcoin goes up. So they will encourage you to borrow against your Bitcoin. Right? It makes sense. They'll create the incentive for you to borrow through the financial system. But this is the agenda for BlackRock. And ultimately, the most beautiful thing about Bitcoin is they can't actually control the underlying Bitcoin. They can control however many Bitcoin get put into that ETF, but you will benefit from the price discovery of this asset even if you are a hodler holding Bitcoin as a bearer instrument, which is what it's designed to be. You will benefit from the price discovery of it as people use it to control the financial industry. There's a lot of depth to the game plan that BlackRock has. Hopefully this gives you an idea of the steps that I've laid out. So you're going to get the ETF first, ESG friendly next, controlling more of the infrastructure, and then you're going to get the idea of financial services, etc., etc., etc. And bear in mind, paying millions of dollars for a Bitcoin is nothing to these people. You have to hold on to your Bitcoin as hard as you possibly can. Protect your Bitcoin at all costs. Stop spending your Bitcoin for pieces of fucking art. This is the most important asset humanity has ever discovered, and you want to spend it right now while BlackRock is getting into this whole thing? It's insane what people are doing. Hold on to your Bitcoin as hard as you can. That should be the mantra for you. And remember, there's only 3 rules to Bitcoin. Step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, you shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy.
So obviously he explained it much better than I've ever been able to put it into words, which is why I wanted to get this video to you guys. Now I know this is a little bit different video than usual. We will get back into the TA tomorrow, but hopefully after watching this, you understand what is coming. You understand those 3 steps that he mentioned, and this is exactly why we are talking about these crazy numbers, 100K, 1 million, maybe even higher than that, because obviously they don't care when they realize that what you can actually ultimately end up doing is, you know, borrowing against, loaning, fueling the banks, whatever. Like I said, he explained it so much better than me. Drop a like if you enjoyed this, guys. Amazing content from British Hodl. I think he broke it down absolutely perfectly. So until next time, guys, I will see you. Make sure you guys check out these tutorials if you're looking to trade. And remember, there are $66,000 in bonuses below. Special $10,000 bonus if you guys want to check over on CoinCatch. So that's it for me. Thanks again. Until next time, stay crypto. And of course, peace out.